introduce the person that is going to be in charge of this wonderful presentation. Maria Laura Garcia is a graduate English teacher from Argentina. Who's from Argentina here? All right. She holds a postgraduate degree in English language teaching and early childhood education. She has specialized in education research, virtual learning environments, education and ICT, and digital policy in education. For the past 10 years, she has been a lecturer in material development, teaching and learning and new technologies at public foreign language teaching training colleges in the city of Buenos Aires. Right? She also works as a foreign languages department, Ministry of Education, City of Buenos Aires, and she has developed teaching materials for the National Ministry of Education and has worked as a primary school teacher for 15 years. Okay, have you ever wondered how to design teaching portfolios? Well, that's the main topic of this presentation called Build Your Digital Teaching Portfolio and Online Presence. Let's welcome Maria Laura. Go ahead, Maria Laura. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, of course.
Yes, I'm in Buenos Aires, so it's a good afternoon. Welcome to this presentation. I will share my screen with you. And as Elizabeth mentioned, she will be sharing some questions with you and some links that I will be presenting today, so you can have, like, you can open other tabs and explore what I share. So I'm checking if everything is okay. Elizabeth, anyway, you can tell me. And here we go. So, as you know, the title of this presentation is Building Your Digital Teaching Portfolio and Your Online Presence. So, I have been teaching subjects related to technology for many years, more than 10 years. And the experience I will be presenting today is related to what I do at one of the teacher training colleges in the city of Buenos Aires. I'm in charge of the course. I'm a lecturer in Técnicas Informáticas. And I will be sharing some portfolios and some ideas that I have been working on during this time. So this is our agenda. We are going to start defining digital portfolios for EFL teachers. So now the focus is on you as educators, you creating your digital teaching portfolios. And then I will share some possible contents that you can include in your digital portfolios and how you can structure and map the teaching portfolios that you create, possible tools that you can use to create those portfolios, and I will share some examples that you can look and explore in this presentation, and then later on, because I will be sharing the links, and of course there will be some time for questions. So before starting, I want to know if you have ever used digital portfolios with your students or you as educators. So if you go to polls, I guess that Elizabeth will share some questions. I don't know, I can't see them, but I don't know if you can see the questions, and then we'll see the results. The questions are, of course, related to using digital portfolios and then using some social networks to share your work as an educator.
Of course, you can go to polls. The question is already there with the options. So please, we invite you to go ahead and answer. Okay, Maria Laura, can you see some of the results? Well, people are still voting. Let's give them some time.
Yes, please. And it says you can see polls when your organizer adds one. So then I don't know if the others if participants can see the poll.
I see that they are voting.
Oh, great.
I guess
so
that
then you can tell us the results.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's give them 20 more seconds. Okay, so let's go to polls, please. And go ahead and vote. Have you ever used digital portfolios to show your work? Okay, we have three possibilities here: yes, no, and what's that? Okay. All right. All right, Maria Laura, I'm going to tell you the results.
Okay.
41.7% said that yes, right? That yes. And 58.3% said no. And there is no results, of course, for WhatsApp.
Ah, well, that's great. So at least you have an idea of digital portfolios. So let me show you this. As I told you, I started teaching subjects related to new technologies long time ago. One of the first things that I did was to create my Twitter account in order to start developing and building my personal learning network. And in those days, you see that I started in 2009. I read in 2011 a tweet that caught my attention. That was tweeted by George Couros, and the title is 5 Reasons Why Your Online Presence Will Replace Your Resume in 10 Years. And that was in 2011. So we are in 2021. So of course, this is really useful and related to this presentation. So I went to the article, I read the article, and it was about 5 reasons why you should be online, and the idea that you are the one creating your digital, your online presence and your digital profile. So if you are in charge of that, you decide what you want to share. And of course, as educators, we want to share that we are professionals and projects we develop, lesson plans that work well, challenges we face in our work. And that is all. This presentation is about that mainly. Different ways of showing our online presence and how professional we are in our work. So you can read this article. You can Google the article and read it. But this was written 10 years ago. I have recently read a new article written by Samantha Fasich. I don't know if you follow some educator podcasts or some educators online. Samantha is part of my PLN, and she wrote, Google is the new teaching resume. So again, this idea that we should have, yes, our print version of our resume, but we should also have our online version of our resume. So there are different ways and different sites we can use to do that. But in all the cases, the focus is on the fact that we are the ones showing our online presence, and we are the ones that we need that decide what to show and what not to show, and what pictures we want to upload. So if you want to continue exploring these ideas, you can listen to her podcast. You can also subscribe to her podcast. That is Edu Magic. So then later on, Elizabeth will also share the link with you. But well, after reading all these resources and working and teaching how to create digital portfolios, I decided to develop this presentation. And to start, I would like to define digital portfolios and their main characteristics. So this is like a general definition of portfolios, especially the portfolios you create or you ask your students to create. We are talking about students' portfolios in that sense, that we usually use students' portfolios to assess their work. We want students in general to collect samples of their work, meaningful samples of their work, and they usually put them together. They include an index, an introduction, or a note at the very beginning, and then references and some reflections and a conclusion at the end. And that's how we usually use portfolios in the classroom. But we also, when using portfolios, we can think about showing growth over time. So maybe the portfolio covers 3 months of hard work or the whole year. And that's how students start collecting samples of their work to show that progress. And in general, you can guide your students into how to select the work, but it is the student, the one who's going to select and samples of their work and start developing that portfolio. It has to do with ownership mainly. So it's not that the teacher is the one that is going to select the student's work. With this idea in mind, we can also start thinking about teaching portfolios, because if we have ever used students' portfolios, then we can move forward and start thinking about how to construct, how to develop a teaching portfolio. But at the same time, if you have never used portfolios with your students, well, you can start by creating your own portfolio as a teacher. And then if that works well, you can start using the idea of portfolios with your own students. So there's a book that I bought many years ago that is Capturing the Wisdom of Practice. And in Spanish, it is called Portafolios del Desempeño de Maestros, Profesores y Directivos. So this book shares different examples of professional portfolios that teachers, administrators, and different type of educators can develop. And what I like about this definition that I included here as a quote is that the author says that portfolios are fluid, even though they can freeze a moment and make it look as if it has a clear beginning and end. And another phrase that I like is that she says, they are museums of our work and thinking. Portfolios are mirrors of our work, and they tell us what we want to see and what we wish we would not see. So the idea of creating a digital portfolio is to show your work, but not just things that work really well. You can also, as you reflect on your work, you can also share things that you need to work on, challenges you face while working, and you can include different visuals that represent your work. So let's move on to some characteristics of these teaching portfolios. It is important to include the context, the places where you work, your courses, your language institutes, or the schools where you work in different parts of the world or in a specific city. Because the events and information you will share are based on a specific setting. So the context is important, your teaching context. Then it's also important to think about your portfolio as a museum, as a journal, in which you narrate different events that you want to share with a wider audience, because at the same time, we are talking about online presence. And yes, you need to include purposeful, meaningful work that reflects whatever you want to show. So let's move on to the second part of this presentation after defining teaching portfolios, that has to do with the content and the structure of the portfolio. And I included here 2 questions. How can I organize my digital portfolio? And what artifacts can I include in my digital portfolio? So once you decide to create your digital portfolio, you need to start thinking about your audience. If you want to create your portfolio to share it with administrators, with school authorities, if you want to create your portfolio because you want to share what happens in your classrooms with families, or if you want to share ideas, tips, and what you do in your classroom with colleagues, with peers, with other teachers. So those are 3 different options of audiences that you can find online. Of course, you can create your digital portfolio and develop posts or entries to tackle the different groups. Some information that you can give to families, something you want to share with teachers, something you want administrators to see about you, and you can combine these 3 possibilities. Then another thing you have to think about while start developing your teaching portfolio has to do with the way you want to present yourself. If you want to show that you are a learning teacher, someone that is constantly taking courses, that you are someone that wants to continue learning, and that's why you read articles, you read books, you participate in webinars, you attend conferences. If you are a teacher educator and you want to share, of course, that you keep on learning, but at the same time you want to show articles you have published, books you have read, presentations you have given. And another possibility is maybe you are a student teacher or a novice teacher, or someone who wants to start working and doing action research. So then you can share the process and you can share results and conclusions about your own research. And that's another way you can communicate what you do in your classrooms. So those are like different examples of roles that you can take when creating your digital teaching portfolio. As regards the structure of the portfolio, if you think about yourself as someone that is constantly learning, of course, in all type of portfolios, you're going to include something about you and a welcome message. So you can include your resume, or maybe you can include a note to the reader or a summary of what you do on where you work. Then you can think about goals and objectives you want to share with others. Maybe you want to say why you're creating this teaching portfolio, what your intentions are. And of course, throughout this teaching portfolio, you're going to include different samples of your work, like lesson plans, activities, projects, field trips, information you think that is relevant for others and relevant, of course, for you, because you are going to include your own reflections, what you have learned while developing that lesson plan, while going on a field trip with your students, while correcting an activity, while developing a test. You want to show and share your reflections, your ideas, your questions with a wider audience, because you're going then to publish your digital portfolio. And you can leave some room for this, for articles, webinars, on talks. You have badges, you have being awarded, certificates. All these elements can be part of your portfolio. But then if you're a teacher educator, in my case, I'm a teacher educator, so of course I can talk about me and my work. I can include reflections, challenges, but sometimes I include papers, information about papers I read, information about papers I write, presentations I deliver, awards and scholarships I have won, and something related to that experience. And that's something else that has to do with creating a digital teaching portfolio and showing my online presence. So I select what I want to share with the audience. As regards the type of artifacts, because if you think about a lesson plan, maybe the next question is, how can I share my lesson plan? So that's why you can use in this digital portfolio hyperlinks to Google Docs, to Google Slides, to websites. You can also upload audios in which you can record yourself. You can upload videos if you want to show a scene, or you record your video giving an explanation or sharing some thoughts about something. You can upload photographs. Of course, I mean, depending on the age group, you have to blur the faces of your students unless you ask for permission to school authorities and to parents, because you are going to show students' images. So that's why sometimes it's better if you want to document your work and share some photographs, to take pictures of elements, or not pictures of your students' faces, but pictures of how they are writing, how they are getting together, working on a project or creating a poster, but you're not taking pictures of themselves and students' faces. We are focusing on the work that they are performing. And the third part, and this part will take us more time, has to do with tools that you can use. And I want to share some examples of digital portfolios. Once you have your audience and you have some ideas of what you would like to share, well, you can start exploring some tools. And you will see that some tools are free and they are really easy to use. And some others are more complex, so they demand more time when planning and when developing the portfolio. So here, as you can see, we have the logo of Instagram. So I don't know if you use Instagram to follow some educators and to share your work. But in my case, I started following some teachers, some educators, and then I decided to create my own Instagram account. As regards level of difficulty, this is something really easy that you can create and use. Sometimes we use social networks to be in contact with our family or with friends, and we share our life with them. But it will be great if you think about creating your digital portfolio and showing your professional online presence, to have like a separate account, a public profile that you can share that has nothing to do maybe with your private life. So then you separate public and private. That is a strategy. Some others, what they do is to have just one account and different groups. So whenever they publish something, they select if they want to show that to a wider audience, and especially also you can think of Facebook when you do that, or if you want to show it with a small group of friends and family. So that's one thing. Another thing that you can bear in mind if you're thinking about creating your digital teaching portfolio and using one of these social networks is what you are going to select to share as part of a post or as part of a story, and the content of that post. So for instance, my public account is not Garcia Maria Laura, just as my name, but I decided to create unlocked classrooms because I work in different teacher training colleges. I have like 10 courses, different courses. So in different teacher training colleges. And I wanted to share colleagues what I do in my courses. So that's why I started this experience last year, in September, October of last year, and I uploaded some posts. So then I created a logo for Unlocked Classrooms that has to do with a digital footprint and like going or stepping inside a classroom to observe what is happening. And I created some posts based on some activities I carried out with my students in my courses. So for instance, that is an example. If you, I don't know, maybe you are there with your mobile phone, so you can go to Unlocked Classrooms and start following Unlocked Classroom and start checking the content of the different posts. And you will see that in general, I post some examples of projects and that I develop with my students, examples of tools that I find interesting, examples of resources that I like. And then within the post, I write an introduction and I write some ideas that I think may be useful for some other teachers. So that is to say, my audience, or when designing my post, I think that my audience can be other teachers or teacher educators who want to see what I do in my courses and to get some ideas. So I created a link tree that I included there. Here what it says, link tree Unlocked Classroom, with some links that I find useful. And this is my public profile. So when I, for instance, want to share what happens in or what I do, I include the link to Unlocked Classrooms. I'm not selling myself as a product, and I'm not selling a product. I'm just showing what happens in the classroom. So that's another type of accounts that you can find online. You will find some educators that share what they do in their classrooms, and at the same time they sell products or webinars. In my case, what you find there is free, and you can contact and send me private messages if you want to know more about one of the experiences. It takes a lot of time to develop the posts, so maybe you should start small and think about at least have one post whenever you see there's something interesting to share. What I usually do is during the first term, I try new ideas, and during the second term of the year, I try to start developing my post and I publish samples of my students' work. That's how I organize like my agenda and my posts. Another tool that you can use is Wakelet. Wakelet offers another possibility to create a digital portfolio, and the level of difficulty is really low because Wakelet, I don't know if you have used Wakelet, but it helps you create collections and content online. So and then you can have private collections of your work, that is to say things you don't want to share that are private, and you can publish collections that you want others to see, and they can be listed or unlisted. Listed means that people can find those collections easily, and unlisted means that they can only find the collection if you share the link. So in my case, I created my profile in Wakelet, and I use Wakelet with my students. So this is a place where I curate content and I share samples of my students' work that are more dynamic than what I use on Instagram. And of course, I tend to connect Wakelet and Instagram. So there you have my profile in which you can say something about yourself. And then you can see that you can develop a menu, and that menu has hyperlinks to whatever you want to share. So in my example, I share samples of my students' work, because this is the place where they write their reflections and they share the different artifacts. For instance, explainer videos, quizzes they create, presentations of themselves. That's how I use Wakelet with my students. But you can also start reading if you think that Wakelet is a good option and you like the design because you prefer this than social networks. You can start reading about and exploring examples of teachers and students creating their digital portfolio on Wakelet. So for instance, this is a screenshot, and then I don't know, Elizabeth, you can share the link with the audience. This is an example in which you can see the picture of the author, and it has like different collections that you can think of tabs, but they are called collections within Wakelet, in which you, whenever you click, you can see, for instance, the resume of the author and interesting information, for instance, articles, or you can also see tasks that the person completed. In this case, this is an example of a student's portfolio, but you can also see examples. If you go to the link I will be sharing, you can see examples of teachers sharing and creating different collections. On Instagram, you create posts, stories, and reels. Here on Wakelet, what you create are called collections. Another tool that is free, but it requires you to watch a tutorial or to start exploring how to create a website, is Weebly. I have been using Weebly in my courses for many years. And you can find Weebly and Weebly for Education. Now Weebly is experiencing some changes. So for instance, last time my students created their portfolios and they couldn't publish them. So that's why if you use Weebly, check before creating your whole portfolio, check if you can publish the portfolio, because it's not working well. But what is interesting about Weebly, because this is happening as Weebly is making some changes, and next year Weebly will merge Weebly for Education and Weebly, and that's why now it's I'm having and some others are having some difficulties when publishing their portfolios. There are like technical problems, but this is happening because Weebly is undergoing some changes. In the case of Weebly, what you create is a website. A website in the free version, you can create up to 4 tabs. So the tabs are like pages with multimedia content that you can include within your portfolio. So my students are, most of my students are teaching in different contexts, language institutes, schools, and sometimes they have private students. This is one example that I want to share by Romina Romanelli. She was my student in 2016. And in those days, she had too many private students. So when she started exploring Weebly as a student teacher, she discovered that it was that Weebly offers great possibilities for her to show what she was doing in those days with her students. So first, she created her student portfolio, in which she included a welcome page, as I told you. Then she included her learning journey throughout the course, because I'm showing here a student's portfolio. So she included a tab, which is a page about me and technology, another one, online resources with useful resources, tasks she completed, and a final reflection. And there you can see a picture of Romina presenting in class. But because she liked the experience of Weebly, she created her own Weebly for her private students. But then those private students turned into a language institute, and that's why you have Windsor English lessons. And there she decided to share her profile, her online presence, and she linked the websites done on Weebly with her Instagram profile. So there you can see information about her and information about different teaching experiences at her language institute. So that is another way of showing your work, how professional you are, and what happens wherever you work in your context. That is one example. Another example that I want to share from another student was created in WordPress. So we mentioned Instagram. Some other teachers use Facebook as examples of social networks that you can use to show your online presence and how you work, and your profile, projects, scholarships if you have if you have one. You can share whatever you want on social networks that show how professional you are. You can use Wakelet as another possibility. You can use Weebly. And now other options are Google Sites and WordPress. If you like using Google, maybe you can create your portfolio on Google Sites. Some other teachers look for what they do is that now you can find, for instance, I'm using SlideMania, and you can find on SlideMania or on SlideGo templates to create your portfolio. So maybe instead of creating a website, like in the case of Google Sites, you prefer to create a presentation that is your portfolio of and you can include different resources. And if not, you can use WordPress to create a website. So this is another example. Cecilia Ranuncolo, she was my student in 2019. Now she's a graduate teacher. In those days, she created her portfolio on Weebly, and this is the way she divided her portfolio: start line, ready, steady, go, on the right track, halfway through, and finish line. Then if you want, I can share the links with you. I send the links to Elizabeth so she can paste them on the chat, and you can start exploring these options. And then after taking the course and exploring this idea of creating a website to show her work, she decided to start her own business, and she created her online profile first on Instagram, and then she created and started exploring how to create a website on WordPress. So this is another possibility. When you start exploring, and first you start start using social networks to show your online presence and your work, and then you decide to create your website to organize your work in another way. And so in this case, she shares things related to language, and sometimes she shares her work online. And this is another example. Last but not least, I have included Bulb as another tool that you can use to create your digital portfolio. And Bulb is similar to Weebly and Google Sites in the sense that you create a website. But at the same time, it's also similar to Wakelet because the website looks like the collections you can find on Wakelet. So it's a mixture of the different sites I have presented before. And this term, my students are going to decide whether they want to use Google Sites to create their portfolio or Bulb. So then you will see later on my Instagram account their creations. So now we can leave some time for you to ask questions. And then I also have another poll. So you can answer the poll. And then Elizabeth, you can share the poll and the questions. So I answer the different questions because we have time.
My dear
Yes.
Maria Laura, which of the questions do you want me to?
Well,
because I wrote in the next question.
yes.
The question for the audience is: do you use social networks to
Yes.
show samples
Yes.
of your
We
work?
can have that one,
Maria Laura? Yes, of course, my
first.
dear.
Yes.
Yes, and the other one. Okay, all right. So please go to polls, and there is a question already published over there. Do you use your social networks to show samples of your work? We have 3 possibilities there. Please, we would like to invite you to go ahead and answer. Is it a yes, no yet, or no way? Okay, so please, I give you 20 seconds in order for you, please, to go ahead and answer the questions in the poll, where in the place where polls is in your right side of your screen if you are in a computer. Okay, all right. They're starting to vote. Okay, and Maria Laura, we do have some questions from our audience. Many. Before we check on the first result, do you want me to tell you what is the first question I have over here? Very good. Now, question, it says, does it mean that a digital portfolio is different to an ordinary one?
Can you say that again?
Okay. A digital portfolio, is a digital portfolio different from an ordinary one?
Here we are thinking about a portfolio as an educator. So, and it's a portfolio that sometimes you use as part of your resume. So maybe you want to show things that are different from the ordinary portfolio that you will usually have. Because this portfolio may be your own website, and it may be part of your resume. So sometimes when you go to a job interview and you want to share what you do with your students, some of your experiences, maybe you can include the QR code to your digital portfolio. And there they can have something in particular that you want to share.
Okay, very good. I have another question over here before showing you the next result. It says, what if the students or your students refuse to show their work?
Well, but here in the case of these portfolios, it's you, the one that is sharing the work. So, for instance, me as a teacher, I may share a lesson plan or an idea that I have, and I can share the structure, I can share my lesson plan, and maybe I can also share a photograph of a sample of a student's work. But before sharing that, of course, if I have 30 students or 20 students, I ask if I can take pictures or a screenshot of their work, and if they give me permission. For example, I ask Cecilia and Romina, I thought it was a good idea to share what they were doing, because they started exploring this idea of showing and having an online presence and showing the work of what they do, but I asked them for permission. So it's always, if your students don't want to share samples of their work, it's okay, because it's their work and this has to do with ownership. So you need to respect that.
Okay, I thank you so much, Maria Laura. We have another question that says, can we use Wix or Padlet for these
Yes.
portfolios?
Yes, sure. I selected these tools, but there are other options. I mean, you can think about Genially, you can think about Canva. Wix is another possibility. It all depends if you want to have a website, um, if you want to have an online whiteboard with all the information there. You also have another website that is called About Me, that you just upload your picture and your biodata and some links to some part of your social networks, and that's all. That's another possibility.
Okay, now
Yes,
going
there
to
are
the
many
results,
options.
Maria Laura.
Mhm.
It says, oh, sorry, my internet connection is a little bit delayed. um, according to the question about using the social network to show samples of our work, 72% haven't used social networks yet.
Ah, look at that. Well, that's interesting. Well, maybe you can start thinking about social networks in that way. I mean, you can start exploring, and if you don't want to show your work, you can start following other educators to see what they do and how they share their work. um, that's how I started. I started exploring, and of course, some of them use Teachers by Teachers, and they sell some of their lesson plans and handouts. Some others give ideas, and they show how they use these ideas with their students. I mean, there are different options, and that's why it's so personal. And well, you have to decide how you want to create your digital portfolio.
Okay,
So
now this leads us to the next question, Maria Laura, or
mhm.
do you want to add something else?
Yes, no, it's okay. You can then
Okay,
post the other one
very good. Which
on the
social
poll.
media, which social media platforms do you use to show your work as educators? Okay, so go ahead and go to a poll again. Some of you have already noticed that I published that question already. So go ahead and answer the questions. Do you use Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or maybe Twitter? Okay, so just to make sure to have some information about it. And in the meantime, Maria Laura, we had a question or a person wanted to participate. Fernando Barbosa wanted to participate asking a question. Would you like to open your microphone or write your question, Fernando? There you go. You need to open your microphone. I'm sorry, activate your microphone so we can listen to you. Hmm. It might be a problem with your microphone, Fernando. Can you tell me if you can listen to me? Can you?
Um,
There is a problem with the microphone. Maybe Fernando, you
type the
can write,
question.
you can type the question. There you go. You can type the question. And while Fernando is solving that, okay, I have another question in the QA part. It says, Maria Laura, is there an online directory of language teachers where they can share their online portfolios and where they can connect with other teachers online?
Well, there's no directory, but for instance, what I did last year, because I wanted to follow some ELT and listen and subscribe to some ELT podcasts, was to tweet um, and to ask for recommendations of ELT podcasts. But what you usually do, for instance, in the case of Samantha Fesich that I follow, she has her website and Edu Magic, in which she shares ideas and resources, and she listed some educators' accounts that you can follow. But it also depends on what you're looking for. If you want to get ideas and get in contact with primary classroom with teachers, or with teachers that are teaching English in different parts of the world, or with teachers educators, or with teachers who are also researchers. I mean, there are different options, but there's, if you want, you can send me a message and I can show you the ones I follow on, if you want to know, on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook. But yes, there are some educators that are very active, and their profiles are very complete, and whatever they show online is really worthwhile.
Okay, there is a question here that Fernando typed. He says, when teachers are hired in Argentina, do employers consider portfolios?
Well, it depends on the school. Like, I mean, in the past, they usually paid attention to your resume, and that was all. But now, what is happening, and what happened to me, is that sometimes they want to see examples of your work. Can you give me an example of, do you like working with projects? Well, can you give me an example? And then, I mean, one thing is to tell and talk about the example. Of course, you can do that in the job interview, but it's even more powerful when you have the photographs or you have evidence of that. So you can see, well, I like working on and developing projects with my students, and these are 3 of my favorite projects. And there you have some pictures or something to show. Is even better, and samples of your students' work. It works really well. Or when you say that you like using authentic resources with your students, and you like, or you like creating your own handouts. Well, sometimes they ask you, well, can I see some, or can you show me, or can you give me an example? And you can start talking about that, but it's even better when you have the evidence right there and you have something to show. And the other thing that I read about and that is happening is sometimes families Google our names as educators and they want to see who we are. That is happening, and that happens to happen to some teachers I know, that parents Google, I want to see Maria Laura Garcia is my student, my kid teacher. I want to see and know about her. Sometimes human resources departments, if you are working in a big school or a bilingual school and an international schools, they also check that. And they want to know more about you. Sometimes they check if you have a LinkedIn profile. So what they say is that if you don't have online presence, and that's what I read and I included at the very end, is that many educators and many recruiters say that if you don't have an online presence, it's kind of weird. You need to have somewhere something about you or some information. So it's better if you decide what to choose and to publish it somewhere. You don't need to have an account in all social networks or a website, but maybe you choose one site, or you create one account and you publish, or even your Twitter account, you retweet things that are that have to do with your profession, maybe. And you
Okay,
can
how
share that.
interesting, Maria Laura. There we have the results about which social media platforms do you use to show your work as educators, and
Yes, or
75% use Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
Facebook. In second place is Instagram, and then Twitter.
Oh, great. And you have now TikTok as another possibility. So maybe you can start checking educators creating their TikTok videos with tips on how to use tools or how to do certain things. That is something that is happening now.
Okay.
And there's one more, the last one for the poll that I included, that has to do with the posts. Elizabeth, I don't know if you have it there. There's a question, or you can, if it's not there in the poll, that is the last one, that if you want me to focus on or to share as part of Unlocked Classroom some posts about one of these tools. Like maybe you would like to see more about something I mentioned, because the
Oh, of course,
presentation is a 40-minute presentation, maybe I can start thinking and planning my future posts.
Actually, there is a suggestion here, and I'm going to write that in the poll as well. There was some suggestions in the chat asking if it's possible for the audience to have your presentation, okay, the slides of your presentation. They asked that, and do you? I cannot find the last question, Maria Laura. I'm sorry. Can you the last
Don't
question that you
worry.
want me to publish? So that's so. But what I could see on the chat, it was that some of them were interested in the presentation and the slides on the presentation today. I sent all the links that you sent me. Okay, and well, I don't know what can we do about it.
Yes, sure. I can send you the link. And the other thing, I mean, I can send you a link, but what I usually do on Unlocked Classroom, when you go to Linktree, I include the link there as another button. So you go directly to the presentation and you can explore. I included hyperlinks on the presentation, so you can explore that on your own. And the other thing that was related to the question is, if you want me to create a post about something that I have mentioned that you would like to know more, I don't know, maybe I don't know, you would like to see something about Bulb as a tool to create a digital portfolio, or you would like to see more examples about how to show your online presence, or as I think it was Fernando who mentioned, well, if I can recommend educators to follow or podcast to subscribe. So maybe you can type and I can start thinking about the posts that I can create and share on Unlocked Classrooms. Because,
Okay, so
you know, I mean, it all depends on the way you want to share the information. But in my case, I use Canva to create my posts, and whenever I have time, I pay attention to the design and the layout and the colors I use and the information I include. So it takes some time to create posts, and that's why I need to plan in advance. But if you would like me to write about something in particular or to share something, you can type it on the chat, and I can do it. And of course, you can send me a private message as well.
okay, wow, the time is flying, and many people in the chat are saying thank you. It was a very interesting presentation. You can also go ahead and follow Maria Laura in Instagram account at Underlock Classroom and answer some of these questions that you might have. You can send her a private message, as she said. And we really thank you so much, Maria Laura, and all of you to be in this beautiful and interesting workshop. It was a very nice presentation, and we invite you to go ahead and continue enjoying this Re-Evolution conference.